The single father was working 3 jobs and sleeping 2 hours a night when he broke down crying during his Steve Harvey interview. What happened next saved his family and showed the world what sacrificial love really looks like. It was March 2018, and Steve Harvey was filming an episode about single parents who make it work. Among his guests was 34-year-old David Thompson from Atlanta, Georgia, who had been raising his 3 children alone for the past 2 years after his wife Lisa died in a car accident. What the audience saw when David walked onto the stage was a well-dressed, confident-looking man who seemed to have his life together. He was wearing a pressed shirt and tie, had a warm smile, and spoke articulately about the challenges and joys of single parenthood. What they didn't see was that David had been awake for 22 hours straight before the taping, having worked his overnight shift at a warehouse, then his morning shift at a construction site, before flying to Chicago for the show. The shirt and tie he was wearing had been borrowed from his neighbor because his own clothes were either at the laundromat or too worn out to wear on television. David's 3 children were his world: 12-year-old Emma, 9-year-old Tyler, and 6-year-old Sophia. After Lisa's death, David had discovered that her medical bills from a year-long cancer battle had wiped out their savings and left them with massive debt. The life insurance payout had covered the funeral costs and a few months of expenses, but David was left with 3 grieving children, a mortgage he couldn't afford, and no clear path forward. Rather than lose the family home, the only stability his children had left after losing their mother, David had taken on multiple jobs. He worked overnight shifts at a food distribution warehouse from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. After getting the kids ready for school, he would work construction from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. In the evenings, he did freelance bookkeeping for small businesses, often working until 10 p.m., before starting the cycle over again. This schedule meant David was averaging about 2 hours of sleep per night, and those 2 hours were often interrupted by children having nightmares about their mother or needing help with homework. The interview started normally, with Steve asking about David's daily routine. "David, tell me about a typical day in your life as a single father of 3. David smiled, but Steve noticed something tired in his eyes. "Well, Steve, I get up early to make breakfast and get the kids ready for school. Then I head to work, pick them up in the afternoon, help with homework, make dinner. Pretty standard single-parent stuff. What kind of work do you do?" "I work in logistics," David said, which was technically true, but didn't begin to capture the reality of his situation. "How are the kids handling everything? Losing their mother must have been incredibly difficult." David's composure wavered slightly. "They're doing really well, all things considered. Emma, my oldest, has stepped up to help with her younger siblings. Tyler's gotten really into soccer, which keeps him busy. And Sophia, she's just this bright light. She still talks to her mom sometimes, which breaks my heart but also shows me how strong she is." Steve nodded, impressed by what seemed like a success story of resilience. "David, what's your secret? How do you manage to keep it all together?" That question hit David like a physical blow. He tried to answer, tried to maintain the facade that everything was fine, but something in Steve's kind eyes and genuine interest broke down the walls David had built to protect his children from seeing how much he was struggling. David started, then stopped. His hands began to shake slightly. "David," Steve asked gently, "are you okay?" "I'm sorry," David said, his voice cracking. I'm really tired." "Tired how? Was the thing? Kost mycket mer thing." "Steve, I haven't slept more than 2 hours a night in almost 2 years." The audience stirred uncomfortably. This wasn't what they'd expected from this interview. 2 hours a night? "David, what do you mean?" And that's when David's carefully maintained facade completely collapsed. Tears started flowing down his face as the truth came pouring out. "Steve, I work 3 jobs. I work at a warehouse all night, construction all day, and do bookkeeping at night. I sleep from about 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Then I go to work. Then I come home and get the kids ready for school. Then I go to my day job." Steve felt his heart sink. "David, that's not sustainable. How long have you been doing this?" 23 months, David said through his tears. "Ever since Lisa died and I realized I couldn't pay our bills on just one income." "Why didn't you ask for help? Why didn't you reach out to family?" "Because my kids have already lost their mother. They're not going to lose their home too. And Lisa's parents, they offered to take the kids, but that would mean splitting them up. Emma would go to Lisa's sister in California, Tyler to her parents in Florida, and Sophia, I can't break up my family." Steve was getting emotional himself. "David, what do you eat? When do you eat?" David wiped his eyes, Embarrassed. I make sure the kids eat first. Always. Breakfast, school lunch, dinner, snacks, whatever's left over, I'll have. If there's nothing left over, I'll grab something from the vending machine at work. David, have you lost weight? About 40 pounds since Lisa died. But it's okay. I needed to lose weight anyway. Steve stood up and walked over to David. Son, you're killing yourself. You can't sustain this pace. I have to, David said firmly. Steve, you don't understand. Those 3 kids are all I have left of Lisa. They're my everything. I will work myself to death before I let them end up in foster care or separated from each other. Steve sat down next to David. David, what would Lisa say if she could see you right now? David broke down completely. She'd be furious with me. She always said I was terrible at asking for help. She used to say that accepting help isn't giving up. It's being smart enough to know when you need support. What kind of help do you need? I don't know, David sobbed. I just need to be able to keep my family together and maybe sleep more than 2 hours a night. Steve looked out at his audience, many of whom were crying along with David. David, I want you to listen to me very carefully. What you've been doing for the past 2 years isn't just heroic, it's superhuman. But Lisa was right. You need help, and you're going to get it. David looked up at Steve, confused. First, we're going to make some phone calls. I want to talk to your mortgage company, your employers, and some organizations I know that help single parents. Steve, I can't accept charity. David, this isn't charity. This is a community taking care of one of its own. You've been carrying this burden alone for 2 years. It's time to let other people help carry it. Over the next 3 hours, while David waited backstage with his children, who had flown to Chicago as a surprise, Steve and his team made dozens of phone calls. They contacted David's mortgage company and negotiated a payment plan that reduced his monthly payments. They reached out to a foundation that provided financial assistance to widowed parents. They connected with local organizations in Atlanta that could provide childcare support and meal assistance. Most importantly, Steve called the construction company where David worked and discovered something remarkable. David's supervisor had been trying to promote him to a project management position for months, a job that would pay twice as much and have normal daytime hours, but David had been too exhausted to perform well in the interview process. When Steve explained David's situation, the supervisor immediately offered David the promotion with a 6-month probationary period and additional support to help him succeed. When David returned to the stage with his children, Steve had news that would change their lives. David, Emma, Tyler, and Sophia, I want you to meet some people. Representatives from 3 different organizations came on stage to explain how they were going to help the Thompson family. David, Steve said, effective immediately, your mortgage payment is being reduced by $800 a month for the next 2 years. You're also receiving a $15,000 emergency fund to help with immediate expenses. David was stunned. Steve, I can't. You can and you will, but there's more. Your construction company is promoting you to project manager, which means better pay and normal hours. You won't need the warehouse job anymore. David looked at his children, who were crying happy tears alongside their father. And kids, Steve said, addressing Emma, Tyler, and Sophia, there's a program that's going to provide after-school care and tutoring for you, and meal delivery to your house 3 times a week. Emma, the 12-year-old who had been trying to be strong for her family, finally let herself be a kid again and started sobbing with relief. Daddy, does this mean you can sleep? She asked. Yes, baby, David said, hugging his daughter. Daddy can finally sleep. Steve wiped tears from his own eyes. David, I want you to promise me something. Promise me that you'll accept this help gracefully and that you'll ask for more help if you need it. I promise, David said. Steve, I don't know how to thank you. You don't thank me. You take care of those beautiful children, and you take care of yourself. And someday, when you're back on your feet, you help another family that's struggling. 6 months later, David returned to the Steve Harvey Show for a follow-up interview. He had gained back healthy weight, was excelling in his new position, and most importantly, was sleeping 7 to 8 hours every night. Steve, David said, you saved my life. Literally. I was 2 weeks away from collapsing completely when I came on your show. The children were thriving. Emma had joined the debate team at school. Tyler had made the travel soccer team. Sophia was taking art classes and had painted a picture of her family that included her mother watching over them from heaven. David, what's the most important thing you learned from this experience? I learned that accepting help isn't giving up. It's giving your children the father they deserve, instead of a man who's slowly killing himself trying to be everything to everyone. David's story inspired thousands of single parents to reach out for help. Steve received over 10,000 letters from viewers who said David's courage in admitting he was struggling had given them permission to ask for support in their own lives. The strongest thing David did, Steve said in a later episode, wasn't working 3 jobs, it was admitting he couldn't do it alone anymore. That's when real strength begins. Today, David works as a regional manager for the construction company and has started a support group for single fathers in Atlanta. He speaks regularly about the importance of accepting help and building community support systems. I tried to be a superhero for my kids, David often tells other struggling parents, but what they really needed was a father who was healthy enough to be present. Sometimes being strong means admitting you need help. If this powerful story of a father's love and the importance of community support moved you, please subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who might be struggling alone and needs to know that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. Have you ever been in a situation where you needed to ask for help? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more stories about the courage it takes to reach out when we need support.